And I'm hoping this works because technology always gets me slightly panicked. But I'm hoping you're here.
Ah, it worked.
Oh, good. I was like, oh my goodness, this is always one of those things that I think is going to work like really smoothly, and then I'm like, no, it's not coming on. It's so lovely to see your face. How are you?
Yeah, you too. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right today. It feels like, it's weird. It's like a bank holiday, but doesn't feel like a bank holiday. I don't know.
No, it's funny day, isn't it? Kind of having a different, I mean, yeah, what is a weekend anymore anyway?
Yeah, let alone a bank holiday.
Yes, exactly.
So I just want to say thanks so much, Emma, for coming and chatting and doing this.
Thanks for asking me.
It's lovely to chat to you, and you are absolutely one of my like top women crushes. You're so on a more serious note, those who are getting to know you and what you do. So are you happy to share a little bit about you? I know I shared it in the post, but
yeah, sure. I don't know whether I can. I'm slightly speechless after doing that. You know, the feeling is entirely mutual, of course. So what do? I'm a clinical psychologist. That's what I do. End of the week. I'm not entirely sure what I do. I'm a clinical psychologist. I work with parents and parents-to-be. So I support people during pregnancy, around their birth, and then in the early years. So usually up to about the age of 3, sometimes up to 5. And just in thinking about that kind of whole perinatal period and how it can have such a big impact on people. I mostly work with mums, also dads and partners at times, and I work with couples too. And of course, we work together at Make Birth Better now, which is great. So I co-founded that with Becca Moore in 2018, nearly 2 years ago, which is crazy.
Where does that time go?
It's gone very quickly.
Well. Yeah.
So that's the other part of what the work that I do. And then I do lots of stuff on social media. So I have a group called The Village on Facebook, which is, so I mean, as you know, I think it's really important. For me, it's really important that as parents, we kind of set up communities and get support however we can. And sometimes online is the only way that we can access that. So that's why that kind of side of things feels really important to me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's open for everyone to join, actually, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's called The Village, isn't it?
It's called, if you search for The Village Parenting Community on Facebook, then you'll find us.
Yeah. So I don't know why I'm getting flashy screen things. I don't know if anyone else is getting that from my screen. I am like, hang on, I'm gonna do a move. I'm gonna do a maneuver.
Okay, cool.
But I first came across your work because of motherhood and moving into this space. And one of the things that we've been talking about quite a bit at the moment is very flattering image of me moving around. Is, of course, like this time that we're going through at the moment and the way that people have been feeling. And one of the things that was talked a lot about on Make Birth Better and the stories that have been shared is, of course, this sort of time of change and this, you know, in a way, the sort of anxiety. But actually, for some people, what they're also saying is the sort of lack of anxiety, and then feeling like, actually, should they be feeling anxious? Because that's what everyone's saying. And I was really interested when we were sort of chatting and hearing your sort of thoughts and take on that, and also these sort of layers as well, that, you know, these layers of emotion and sometimes the things we're not seeing, and also experiencing some of this numbness. And I think it'd just be really amazing to hear your specialism in psychology on that, but also your take on it as somebody who works a lot with parents and especially with mothers.
I think it's really interesting what you say about, for some people there is anxiety, and for others actually they feel okay, and they're kind of wondering why that is, and if there's something that they're not seeing that they should be, because I think it just demonstrates that we're all so different, right? And everyone is coping with what's going on in our kind of global situation differently. But also, I mean, pregnancy and early parenthood is a time which is very, very individual, and there's so much. I think one of my kind of biggest bugbears is so much kind of pregnancy and parenting literature is it kind of makes out like, you know, we're all kind of doing the same thing. We all feel similarly about things. Our babies should all be acting in the same way, and our bodies should be acting in a certain way. And of course, we bring so much to our experience from, you know, our individual, what's important to us, what our coping strategies have been, how we were brought up, and, you know, how we've learned to cope with anxiety, what our kind of natural sort of personality traits are. So, you know, all of those things that make us the individuals that we are. But suddenly, when we become pregnant, it's as if all of those individual differences disappear.
Yeah.
So there is no kind of one fits all approach. We often talk about that in relation to birth, right? But we also need to think about that in relation to, yeah, mental health and in terms of pregnancy, and also in that postnatal period. Because I think that, I mean, it's natural to feel anxious now. It's natural to feel anxious when we're pregnant anyway, because it's a whole new world that we're about to enter into. And, you know, there are anxieties around the pregnancy, there are anxieties about the role change that you're about to go into. Is the baby going to be okay? You know, all of these things that are very natural to worry about.
Yeah.
But equally, there are lots of reasons why you might not be feeling anxious at the moment. And I have heard from people who are actually really valuing the opportunity to be at home. You know, that's not the case for everybody. Some people who are pregnant who are still having to work, and sometimes working in positions that are leaving them feeling very vulnerable, and financially also very vulnerable. So, you know, again, it's just all about our individual experience. But if you are at home, and maybe you also have a partner at home with you, and maybe, you know, you've both been furloughed, or you have the opportunity to not be working, you know, for some people it's a real time of just resting and thinking about, you know, what's coming, and not having the kind of pressure of having to carry on life as normal, which in some ways, that's what I often talk about. Often anxiety can come from knowing that you're kind of going on to a different path and not feeling like you're quite allowed to fully embrace it. So for some people, actually, they are just able to fully embrace this kind of space that they're existing in. For others, it's very different. So I think it's just about, you know, thinking about how it is for you and how anxious you're feeling, and then thinking about what you can do in your particular situation that might help you to cope with that anxiety.
Yes, absolutely. And I think there is something so true about that. We sort of lump everyone who's pregnant into this sort of homogenous sort of, you know, group, don't we, of this experience is going to be the same. And as you say, everything that's happened sort of prior to us being pregnant goes into this next stage of the journey. And we're all in very different life situations as well, and that impacts us too. And so there isn't this just overall one feeling, although, as I mentioned as well, it is quite normal for some people to feel that sort of anxiety around the changes in pregnancy, maybe approaching birth, and we talk about, of course, what's life with a new baby going to be like, and there is a sort of natural level of probably anxiety that comes with some of that too, right?
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting what you're saying about, you know, people not feeling anxious, and then hearing that other people are feeling anxious, and then thinking, oh, should I be feeling anxious? I'm not feeling anxious. It just, I think, really demonstrates the pressure that we get placed on us when we become pregnant and when we become parents. And, you know, I talk a lot about kind of how our expectations can be so influential, and lots of those expectations come from outside ourselves. So they might come from family members, they often come from social media, they often come from parenting books and blogs and that kind of thing, and also midwives, you know, that all of these kind of people that we're coming into contact with, and it's a new experience. So, and even if it's not your first baby, this is still a new pregnancy, and you're also then maybe going into what it's going to feel like to be a parent of more than one child. So we can become very vulnerable to other people's opinions. You know, we were just soaking up, like all the time, soaking up what is expected of us. What are we supposed to be doing this in a way that feels okay? What, you know, it's, if you think about, I often think about kind of identity and the factors that are involved in identity transitions. And, you know, if you think about that with a teenager, you know, we've talked about matrescence before. If you think about what happens in adolescence, we're looking around all the time and we're testing out and experimenting. Do I want to be that kind of person? Or, you know, maybe I'm going to listen to that kind of music for a while and see how that influences my identity. We do the same thing in pregnancy and early motherhood. And actually those opinions then become so much more powerful. So we're constantly kind of thinking, is this okay? Am I doing okay? Is this the way that I'm supposed to be feeling? Are these the kind of things that I'm supposed to be doing? And I think it's always just worth noticing that, and being able to say to yourself, well, that there is maybe a kind of general trend, there is a general kind of thing that people seem to be doing, but does that actually fit for me? Is that how I feel? Is that how I want to do things?
I think that's such a useful strategy, actually, isn't it? Because so often, and especially in this space where whether we're having our, expecting our first baby, or we're going through an experience again, we are in that space of feeling like, oh, this is new, and we need to find how to do it. And there is something that we can lose ourselves a little bit in that, can't we? And we can lose our sort of our sense of what's right for us. And so by being pulled into this sort of generic lump of this is someone going through this experience, we end up sort of losing a sense of our own identity and what is important to us. And I think that's a really useful strategy, actually, if you're feeling like I don't know where I am, or I'm not sure, trying to tune back in to what feels important. Would you say there's something around values in that, thinking about what your values are or what you enjoy in terms of doing that?
Yeah, think about values. I mean, when it comes to anxiety, it's around thinking about the strategies that have worked for you in the past. Those are all of the same strategies that will work for you at the moment.
Yeah.
But also just knowing that you might not know for a while, that you might not know what kind of works for you. It's about experimenting, it's about trying on different things. And that I think there's often that kind of language, isn't there, when we're talking about pregnancy and birth, that if you just do it like this, then everything will be okay.
Yeah.
Just do hypnobirthing, then the birth's going to be great. And if you just if you just listen to this person, they had a really successful experience, and then it's all going to be fine. So it is very easy to get into that kind of black and white thinking, and just being able to experiment and think, well, maybe I'm going to try that and just see how it feels for me. And you'll know then if it feels like it's something that's going to work for you, or you'll know very quickly if actually it feels like it's not a good fit.
Yeah. And I think there's something really useful in that, and that's coming back to how something makes you feel, because it also made me think about those people who at the moment are feeling quite numb through it all, almost like there's so much going on that it's not impacting at all. It's just we can't let it impact. And I was really interested to hear your thoughts for those who are feeling like, actually, this is so much, I'm just kind of
too much.
Yeah.
I think that if people tend to kind of cope with their anxiety, either, if we think about the fight or flight response, we know it's fight, flight or freeze. So either some people are feeling really kind of up and irritated and maybe a bit angry at the moment, that's around for a lot of people, not just in pregnancy, but across the board. Or people are feeling, that kind of real anxious response, that more flighty response. And there is a kind of more panicky feeling with that, or some people freeze, they shut down and they just can't process. And that's partly to do with kind of how we're feeling about this particular situation, but also that has a lot to do with our histories. So, if we've been brought up not to be able to voice our anxiety or worries, not to feel that, they're going to be heard, or equally, if we've actually been brought up quite often feeling quite frightened and frozen, then that's a place that we can very easily go back to.
Yeah.
I think that the thing about feeling frozen is that at some point all of the emotions can come and hit you all at once, and we don't always know when that's going to be. So it's worth, if that's where you're at the moment, just finding some spaces where you do feel safe, psychologically safe and physically safe, where you might be able to find some time just to be able to reflect on what's going on, doing some grounding exercises so that you're dropping into your body, thinking about, actually, if I tune into my body, how am I feeling at the moment? How is my anxiety in my body? What's my adrenaline like? What's my heart rate like? Often we can kind of, in that numbed out state, we can still feel, when we tune in, that actually there's a lot of anxiety going on in our system. And just being able to kind of, whatever techniques maybe have worked for you in the past, or looking for techniques that may work for you at the moment, just to help you kind of get out of that sympathetic nervous system response, that fight, flight or freeze response, and into something that is a bit more of a kind of rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system response. So that again is different for everybody. So some people love breathing, some people hate breathing, but across the board, grounding is always something that's really useful, particularly if you are somebody who turns more to that kind of frozen response.
Yeah.
So grounding might involve, really planting your feet firmly on the floor, really dropping down into your body and thinking about how it feels for your feet to be touching the floor, really focusing in on that sensation, sometimes even imagining the ground underneath the floor, so really connecting you to the earth, and just being able to then pull you back into, this is where I am at this moment, I'm safe.
Yeah.
And another really kind of lovely one that I quite like is just looking for colours in the room, because it's a really quick and easy thing to do. And again, it's because if you're kind of in that slightly frozen state, or if you're in a really anxious state, you're not here. You're either kind of spiraling off into the future, you're thinking about the past, or you're trying really hard not to think at all. And that is actually quite an active process too. So just being able to flick that around and just go, okay, what can I see around me that's yellow? And just really consciously going through, I can see a soft toy, I can see a lampshade. And it just lets your body know, oh, okay, we're safe actually. At this particular moment, I'm okay, I'm safe.
That's such a useful tool, isn't it? And it's actually really useful if when we're talking earlier on about those feelings, and sometimes actually we're separated from what feels right for us, and just coming back to the noticing can be a really good space of opening up just that awareness of just starting to notice really slowly, whether we're noticing what's going on outside or inside. It's just that let's just open up the dialogue of what's here, what's going on.
Just acknowledge it. It can be scary to do that. I think it's worth saying that, if you have worked really hard not to look at your feelings, and if you don't feel like you've got people around you who can contain those feelings, that's a really good reason to stay a bit numb. That actually, if you don't feel like somebody's going to be able to hold them with you, dropping into your body, starting to ground, that's when your emotions start to come to the surface, and that can actually feel quite dangerous for some people, or just a bit too much. It's like, actually, maybe I don't feel like I want to cry now, maybe I feel like I don't want to feel these feelings now. So it's worth just thinking about who you feel safe with, where you might be able to release some of those feelings. And that might be, often it's not the people that we always expect. It might not be a partner, it might be a friend, or it might be an antenatal teacher, or it might be a psychologist or a midwife. So looking for those people where you feel like, actually, I can think of some people who might be able to help me contain this that I'm feeling.
And there's something really important, I think, in that containment as well, and especially when if we're feeling too much, or feeling like we're not feeling anything at all, it can also be about being held, can't it, through this experience?
Yes, absolutely,
feeling that weight. And actually, one of the things might be useful for somebody if they find it helpful is that weight can be quite handy, like even Wheatie bags and things like that. Just physically feeling our bodies again, putting some weight, like pillows or things that have a little bit of weight on us, so we can physically feel where we are, can be quite a useful grounding technique as well. Just bring us back into this time and space and our body a little bit gently. But I was also thinking around this in terms of change as well, and where people might have felt like, actually, this is the first time they may have felt some of these sort of bigger challenges. So they felt that they've actually had really good strategies for coping before, but this has sort of thrown out, our usual coping strategies, or that, they felt like, actually, this is such profound change that they've never had to deal with anything like this. And how to still go through the process of change when it's, and to try and process it, if we can, to some degree. Because one of the things that's coming up a lot that people are saying is that obviously in their pregnancy journey, they're having to make decisions and they're having to make choices. And then these are changing, and then they're changing again. And so just thinking perhaps around some of that, I'd be really interested to hear your insights on what might.
It's really hard. It's really hard, because actually, at a time when we're feeling anxious anyway, or at a time when we're just feeling excited, then we want to have some certainties to hold on to. And there's so much about birth that is so uncertain, and there's so much about, we know it's going to be a new experience. Even if you've given birth before, you haven't given birth to this baby. And it can really help us feel in control, having certain things that we just know, these are our certainties. I know that this is where I'm going to give birth. I know that my partner's going to be with me. I know that I can ask my partner for these things. And a lot of those certainties have been taken away from people. But I think that there are also, I mean, we had that really lovely blog post on the Make Birth Better website, which shared some birth stories from people who've already given birth in this situation, with lots and lots of tips on there about the things that really helped them. Yeah. And I think it is then about looking for other certainties. You know, you might have lost some of the things that you really thought were going to be, you know, this was in my plan, this is what I really wanted. And, you know, maybe there's also, I think we need to say that there might be a bit of grief there as well, that you're not going to get the experience that you'd planned, and it's okay to feel bad about that. It's okay to feel annoyed and frustrated about that. But then looking for, you know, well, what are the certainties? What are the things that I feel like I can control? And actually, some of those, the tips on the blog, so it's on the Make Birth Better website at the moment, some of those tips are really helpful. And I think one of the things that I'm sure you've heard a lot, Sakina, as well, is just actually how supportive midwives are being. Yes. What I've heard predominantly from women is that staff are being so kind and really going above and beyond, knowing that this is not a situation that anybody wanted to find themselves in, and knowing that they have to be the emotional support. So what I'm hearing a lot is actually that people are feeling very well contained and well held within the services that they're going into.
Yes,
and then thinking about, you know, also what are the other things that are going to make you feel more comfortable, you know, that more soothed. So taking stuff from home that you might feel comfortable with, making sure that you've got your phone with you so that you can FaceTime people who you really wish were visiting you in hospital, you know, so all of those things. And, you know, in some wards as well, they might allow you to bring in things from the birthing centre if the birthing centre's closed. I mean, I think what's really nice at the moment is that we're starting to see some of those choices that were very rapidly removed at the beginning in many trusts are starting to kind of come back in again. So birth centres are reopening, some places are allowing home births again. So I think, you know, that there is a kind of, we're in a slightly more reflective space again where some of those things are starting to come back into play.
Yes, and I think that's really helping, and I think sometimes as well it's sort of making people feel like actually there is a little bit of normalness in a way, which I think that can be a nice sort of net to hold on to, can't it? How we think things can and should be, and I think as well the fact that there is a little bit of time for some people now means that they're actually able to use some of those choices and decisions again, which is actually sometimes as well people are saying, like, I don't know what to do now because I've changed my plan once, I don't know if I want to go back and change it again. And
especially if you've kind of got your head around a new idea. But I think it's also, you know, midwives are happy to discuss these things with people, and, you know, I think that everybody's going through this process together. Midwives are also having to adapt to changes, and I think a lot of people have pulled back from contacting services, particularly early on, because there was this feeling like, oh, we don't want to put any additional pressure on the NHS. Actually, you know, all the midwives that I've spoken to have said, please, you know, continue to be in contact. If you've got questions or concerns, as always, that midwifery support is still there. It's just in a slightly different form. So, you know, I think if people are concerned or they just want to think through what their choices are, then do phone the midwife and discuss it with them.
Absolutely, and I think one of the things that's coming across from a lot of midwives at the moment is just how much they're really wanting to connect with those that are coming into that, and really valuing that connection for themselves as well. And actually, it's quite interesting, and just thinking as we're sort of probably coming towards like our sort of end, is just how people might be able to honour this for themselves. I mean, it's a time of change, and we've been hearing about a few different tools and ideas that people might be able to use to also acknowledge that it's not necessarily giving birth at a time as there was before, and honouring this journey as being quite an exceptional one, and just remembering it as being an exceptional one in some ways. And I wondered if you had any sort of final thoughts on what that might
look like.
Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? Because you know, these will be called the COVID babies. These are babies that will always be talked about and remembered and thought about, and it'll be interesting, won't it, to see, like, will they be followed as time goes on?
Yeah,
you know, because I think that for those people who are pregnant at the moment, there's also a lot of joy in reading about stories of babies being born at this time, and actually it's one of the kind of more hopeful and positive this experience, you know, is that thinking about these are things like life is still continuing even as we're, you know, surrounded by all of this tragedy. So I think, again, it's an individual thing, you know, to think about what people would like to do to mark it. I mean, it's a huge thing to go through anyway, giving birth, and people have to find their own ways to honour that. But I think, yeah, it's worth thinking about, again, what is going to fit for you, whether there's something that you might want to do. Lots of people are journaling at the moment. Lots of people are keeping video diaries, you know, being able to kind of connect with other women in the same situation. But again, thinking about what you would like to do to mark the experience, and just, you know, what a huge experience it is for so many people.
Incredible, isn't it? And I think one of the things that has been really remarkable that I felt as well is it just shows that even through times of challenge there is such great resilience, and there is just unbelievable sort of ability to find a way through. And I think that's one of the, you know, it's not always an easy journey, but actually there is something quite astonishing in what the reserves that we can find at times of great challenge too, but also the times of great joy. And one of the things that we're going to start next week is Birth Still Happens, where people have been sharing their stories with us using so we have 4 questions, so we're going to be sharing some of those next week with Birth Still Happens, just to sort of share that yes, it's still going on, and you know, even in times of change, some things don't change, and actually this is still a process that generally is just still happening.
Still happening, yeah, absolutely.
It's still happening, it's still going on. But I just wanted to say as well, Emma, thank you so much, and I could just chat to you all day. I love just hearing you talk. But I'm really keen that if anyone has any questions or they want to reach out more, then they can find you at Mumologist, can't they?
Yeah.
On Instagram.
Yeah.
And also, if you haven't had a look, please have a look at Make Birth Better, and it's at Birth Better here on Instagram, but it's Make Birth Better. And you can also find Emma over at the Village, and you have also there is a whole collective now as well, aren't there, of psychologists working?
There are. Well, we've got, I think just because I often get kind of more referrals than I can see myself. And also, you know, I have a particular specialism, but people often contact me with questions about children, and I'm not a child psychologist. So I've started working with a team of other psychologists. So we're offering kind of online therapy as per usual. So if people do feel like they need additional support, then they're welcome to reach out. But I'm always happy to answer people's questions in DMs, so people are welcome to contact me there if they want to chat anything through.
And likewise, if anyone has any questions and they want to send them through, we can always forward them on or ask too. But just want to say thank you very much.
Thanks, Akina.
Lovely to
see you.
And lovely to speak to you. And thanks everyone who's come and joined us. It's been really nice. Seen lots of waves and things. So thanks so much. And I wish you a really nice weekend, whatever weekend means. And I will see you all next week. But big thanks, Emma, and thanks for joining.
Thanks, Akina. Nice to see you.
Lovely to see you. Take care.
Bye. Bye.